This is a review of the Heracles imagery that we went over last Wednesday with a few additional things. First of all, um, first of all, these are the items that identify Heracles as Heracles. Most importantly, he's got this lion skin that he usually wears, sometimes uses as a shield. You can tell most easily by the feet that dangle down here. Sometimes you can see the tail. You can usually see he's got something over his head, but depending on how detailed the artist is, it's sometimes not all that clear. Okay. He usually has a club with him. This is here. He sometimes also has a bow. Seldom you see him with any other kind of weapon, but sometimes. Here's a second example with Heracles with a bow. And again, you can see the details of the lion skin, the mane, and around his head. It's a nice black figure called black figured pottery painting with the red being the natural color of the clay. So to start with some examples of baby Heracles strangling the snakes that were sent by Hera. You see that this snake is more or less intact. This one is has been broken off, but you can see he's got it by the head. It's nice that he's a baby, has sort of a full head of hair, but he is at least baby size, infant size. Here's a nice bowl. You can go in a little further. You can see that little cherubic Heracles has a snake in this hand, and I guess that's the snake there. See the toils here of the snake. A nice Roman example. Only one snake is visible here, but we're pretty sure it's Heracles. He's the only person who has any such kills a snake as a child stories. Sometimes the artists don't try even to make the baby Heracles and his brother look like babies. They're like full-grown men. They're just slightly smaller in dimension than the women around them. This is Athena. You can tell she has no helmet on. You can see she's carrying a spear-like thing, and she's got the aegis on with the snaky fringe here. There's Heracles with this one snake there, one snake there. Okay. Another episode from the youth of Heracles. He has no beard. This is he here. He's beating to death his music tutor. Usually his name is given as Linus, sometimes as Chiron. Chiron is, or Linus, is defending himself with the lyre, at least he's holding up the lyre. And young Heracles is beating him to death with the leg of a stool. That's supposed to be like that. There must be a detail in the story, because this is not the only version, the only portrait of the centaur Linus being beaten to death like this. And see, he's represented as a man, here not as a centaur. This is a very similar looking item here, but this is not a lyre. This is the Delphic tripod. In one of the competitions between Heracles and Apollo, they fight over this thing. A tripod is a kind of altar. Okay, here he's bearded though. He's got a club. He's got the lion skin already. You can see the paws. See what I mean about the head? It's sort of hard to tell they weren't very good at drawing them. This labor, not the first one, but the first one for us this evening, is one of the Lernaean Hydra's um, demise at the hands of Heracles and his brother Iolaus. So Athena is standing off to the left with the white arms and the helmet. If the vase were turned a little more, you could see more clearly. But you can see this is obviously Heracles. He's got the lion skin on. He's systematically going about cutting off the heads of these, the heads of this animal, while Iolaus is supposed to cauterize them with the flame. Another version of this, Heracles again, this time with you can see he's got a sword. It's very unusual. And his brother Iolaus has looks like a curved blade of some kind. Okay. Here are a more manageable number of heads. These are just 9 heads here. So, and the brother over here with the little hook-shaped thing, like a little scythe for cutting reeds, cutting them off here, and Heracles is beating them to death with his club. So it's interesting, in the previous one he has a sword, which is much better for cutting off heads than a club is. These is one of the examples of Heracles ridding Lake Stymphalos of the birds, the bird plague, where he's, I don't know if I have an image of this, but first of all makes noise, has noisemakers that frightens the birds into the air, and then shoots them with a slingshot. So you can see the lion skin here, the tail, the paws, most easy thing to see, and something over his head that's sort of indistinct. A second version, earlier, not quite so well drawn, but interesting that he's nude, except he has the lion skin. He's using it as a shield, wrapped over his arm. You can see the paws here, and somehow he's got it partly on and partly around his arm, and the slingshot here. The Nemean lion. This has been sort of doctored by someone on the net. Pretty sure they didn't meant purple, but this is a detail of the Nemean lion being strangled by Heracles because he couldn't stab it, of course, because it had an impenetrable skin. So he couldn't use his bow, he couldn't use a knife or a sword. Again, we assume this is Heracles. There's not anything, doesn't say Heracles here, but a man wrestling a lion anyway, a rather small lion, but nevertheless you see the tail here. And a sword is hung up here and a cloak. There's a number of, there's more variation in this this labor, the way it's represented in art. Here we have one with a lion and Heracles, who's beardless, are disengaged, and he's trying to use a bow, which of course will not work. And the lion is sort of roaring. I guess that's a roaring mouth. It's out there. So a young Heracles, and they're not actually wrestling. Wrestling is the usual moment that it's choose. Here's Heracles again, is standing this time, getting ready to strangle the lion. You can see in these early paintings in black figure, they often identify the figures. And surprisingly enough, Heracles looks like that in 6th century Greek writing. Later on, you won't write that, they didn't write that H. that would be the other way around, sort of like a inverted V, and that would be a different letter, an H-shaped letter. And Athena is standing over here. Big parts of her are missing, where parts of the vase were broken and not recovered. And you see she has a shield, she has a helmet on. Um, and this is a sort of undoctored version of the one I showed you earlier, the detail of it, where Heracles appears to be actually putting his hand in the mouth of the lion while he strangles it with one arm, which is a little weird. But again, except for the theme, no way to know that this is Heracles. But again, no one's stupid enough to wrestle a lion but Heracles. Again, it's the same sort of posture as in 2 slides ago. Heracles um, standing and choking the lion, and Athena sort of standing by as if to help, but not really in a helping posture. And with black limbs, so she wasn't painted white like what often is the case for females. Okay. This is the taming of Cerberus. This labor, the last labor, is supposed to be Heracles is meant to go down into the underworld and bring Cerberus back up to show to Eurystheus, which he does. I'll show you in a minute. Cerberus is not only a dog with, here there are 3 heads, sometimes there are more, with snakes around, typically on the tail, but in this artist has put them all over the place. And Heracles has white skin, sort of odd. But he has his club. He's got something over his head that could be a lion skin. He has a tail, which belongs to the lion. So it's sort of, yeah. This is a little clearer, although they only managed to put 2 heads here. And they don't look very dog-like either. But anyway, this is, again, the taming of Cerberus, the hellhound, how it's sometimes translated. What happened in one of the versions of the myth is Heracles wraps him up in something called a cuirass, a metal, sometimes leather protector for the upper body. So you can see a little snake on top of his head here and a snake there. Sometimes it gets translated as dragon. There, you can see also there are chains here, so sort of going to use compression to get the dogs to behave. This is a sort of ambitious version of the same myth, where with 2 gods, Mercury or Hermes, with his traveler's hat on, the Pedasos, and Athena with her helmet and her white skin and sort of super elongated arm, and a spear, and a chariot, and an owl. She said that's her totemic animal, the owl. And Heracles has got his club over his head, and he's wrestling with this animal here, which must be the lion. Okay. This is the Erymanthean boar, large boar that he was charged with by Eurystheus to go and get, that he has to bring it back alive, so he carries it on his shoulder, feet up, as if it couldn't squirm away like this. So see the difficulty the artist has in making this look like a convincing lion skin, sort of mottled skin, mottled. But you can see the tail, you can see the paws, sort of. You can see there is definitely something over his head. So you know that it's Heracles. This is Athena. Again, a big chunk of the vase is missing, but you can plainly see the white limbs and white face and the crest on her helmet. And according to one version of the myth, Eurystheus is afraid and so gets into a bronze jar to protect himself from the boar, because the boar has these tusks and also sharp lower teeth that can injure you quite badly. Same theme, same Eurystheus in a jar, same Heracles with a not particularly well-drawn lion skin, but with a tail, and with, I guess they're supposed to be paws, and a nice upside-down boar, probably the best drawn thing in the whole design. This is the artwork for the not wealthy. The wealthy would have had metal um, jars to do this kind of thing for the most part, which of course that was valuable. They were made of precious metals or useful metals, and so we don't have very many of those anymore. But we have lots of this pottery that's designed like this. So you can see this is Heracles. It's not really clear in this drawing what he's attacking, but he's attacking this monster Geryon, who owns a herd of cattle. Heracles is supposed to bring back for Eurystheus. You can see him with this very large lion head and paws, with his bow in one hand and arrows, and his club, and a shield with the Medusa on it, although she's not sticking out her tongue. This is the two-headed dog, or you can only see one, that helped guard the herd. Heracles had to kill quite a number of people to get at these cattle. And you can't quite see what's so monstrous about this Geryon guy in this picture. But there are several versions of this, which and here he is, Heracles. Again, you can see because it says Heracles here, although the H looks more like a box with a line through it. E-R-A-K upside down, or V-like letter, E-S, Heracles. These three heads here are all conjoined. That's the monstrous thing about Geryon, is that he's a man with usually three heads and one body, but often enough three heads and the rest of their body, but it's joined at the hip. So it's sort of like a triple threat. Sometimes they're shown as facing in different directions at the same time. So they've got spears and shields, and Heracles just has this bow. He must have a club with him somewhere. It's not shown. Okay, this is the whole scene. Sometimes they made drawings, so you don't have to walk all the way around the vase. Here are the cattle. Here's Athena, who's very oddly drawn, with covered with snakes, long snakes, which are attached to the aegis. I've never seen them quite so large before. She's identified here as Athena, Athenae. Heracles here, and the three in one Geryon monster, who this version has wings too. So, the same myth, Heracles using a sword this time, but again with the lion skin, with the not very paw-like paws, and Athena, badly drawn over on the left, and Geryon, the Geryon monster, with one head looking backwards and only two looking forwards, and Heracles with a sword. Here's a nice one side of a vase is devoted to the three-headed guy, Geryon. This is the Corinthian hind, or sometimes hart, depending on who's telling the story, where the antlers were gold, and so um, here he seems to be breaking them off. I think in one myth he just shoots it. He's supposed to bring it back alive, but he runs so fast that it doesn't bleed out until he gets to back to Eurystheus. It's another version of the same myth with Athena, again with the super snaky aegis that she's got on, and a helmet with a very prominent crest. Um, and a nice deer with antlers, nice rack, as hunters would say. And Heracles sort of has his back to you a little bit, but you can see he's got this skin on with the tail still on it. He's always wearing these extremely short chitons, like in this previous one, so you can show off his legs. Okay. This is the myth where Heracles had to get the belt, or the zoster, sometimes called the girdle of Hippolyte, the Amazon, and he or she is beating her to death with his club, while another Amazon tries to defend her. Okay. Just to give you an example, this is not the only time Greeks have to combat Amazons. In the myth of the Caledonian boar hunt, after they killed the boar, so here's the boar's head underneath, there was a wrestling competition with one of the hunters, Atalante, and Peleus, who's the father of Achilles. Okay, they're wrestling here. There's another version of the same one. So in this one, she's more discreetly dressed. This is more like the Spartan version of it. The Spartan girls apparently wrestled in this way. Although Athenian men would have only heard about this, they wouldn't have seen it themselves. You can tell that Atalante has the white skin here. Here is Heracles with the same getup, only with it looks like arrows actually here. Um, Taking a single large animal, the Cretan bull, back to Eurystheus. This is just a black and white reproduction from the book. Here are the cattle of Geryon being brought back. Once he defeated Geryon, he had to bring this herd of cattle back. And a long and tortured expedition with more people who challenge Heracles and die. And Hera sending gadflies to make them run away. But eventually he gets them back to Eurystheus, and he sacrifices them to Hera. This is the mosaic I showed you of Heracles wrestling the Cretan bull. He just put his club down. He doesn't kill the Cretan bull. He takes it back with him to the mainland. Okay. Here's one of his conquests along the way. A king of Libya named Antiochus, son of Poseidon, who's allegedly got stronger the closer he was to the ground. So Heracles, as you see in this bronze here, turns him upside down, holds him up above the ground, and kills him that way. This is when, after killing people in Libya, he goes to Egypt, this sort of mythical Egypt. The Greeks had contact with Egypt but not everyone knew about it, least of all vase painters. So the myth is he went there, and a king named Busiris had a law to sacrifice, here on this is an altar, sacrifice foreigners to curry favor with the gods. And so here's Heracles with a sword. He kills little bits of blood here. These must be Egyptian priests, or their version of Egyptian priests. A more well-known version of the same thing with a very large club here, and he's holding one of the servants upside down. So you see the paws here of the very stylized paws and the tail of the lion skin. And this looks actually quite like a lion's head, a small lion. And just to the right here, you see this guy's got an axe, which was typically used in slaughtering an animal at the altar. You can see again the altar looks like the top of a column. So, here's a more damaged but interesting one because it's a blackface the drawing is made in black. The red is the paint of the pottery itself. And the artist has put the Egyptian priests in these white linen robes. Linen was the thing that the material that used for clothing in Egypt, as opposed to wool that the Greeks used. This is before the first ship in mythology. Later on, there's an expedition of the Argo, which is the first Greek ship. So when Heracles has to sail across and get these paddles, he has to borrow a wine goblet from the sun god and slip across on this, and then sort of unconvincingly brings the cattle back with him in this little wine goblet. So, but you can see it's clearly him, not being cooked. He's sailing. Doesn't look very happy about it either. Here we go. One of the things he got on this expedition was the golden apples of the Hesperidae, the evenings, the daughters of night. And so these 4 women are goddesses of evening. And they had this is supposed to be an apple tree guarded by a snake, sometimes in myth called a dragon, but they meant by that a snake. Here's a slightly better drawn one where the snake is very nicely colored and quite large, being fed by one of the Hesperidae. Okay, to get to the golden apples, he has to enlist his brother, another Titan, Atlas. With his help, Atlas has the job of holding up the globe of the sky, not the world, but the globe of the sky. And he convinces Heracles to hold it up for him while he goes and gets the golden apples. In one version of the myth, Atlas is the father of the Hesperidae, but that's not in every version. So he goes off and gets the apples. That's what he's holding here. And then Heracles has to trick him into taking the burden of the sky back again. Which he does by saying, well, he's willing to switch places with Atlas and hold up the dome of the sky, but he just needs a pad to go on his head. It's heavy, and so when he puts it, Atlas picks it up for him so he can get a pad, and then Heracles gets away. Um, this is presumably Hera. For all that Hera plays a major role in all of these myths, these apples were a gift from Gaia, the primordial goddess of the world, to Hera and Zeus when they got married. But they're kept for safekeeping with the daughters of Hesperus of the evening. This is from a metope, that is the half sculptures that run along the inside of a temple, a Greek temple. This is from Olympia, the temple of Hera. Okay,